Good.
Welcome to the End of the Bench podcast. It's a casual Sunday here. It's me and Jonathan Slotter here with, of course, as always, James Haldeman. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, my friend. We had a minor ant issue this morning, but outside of that, we're firing all cylinders here.
There you go. Uh, I hear ants hate like glue, like those little sticky things. You just gotta put them out and they'll crawl right into it.
Interesting. Maybe I'll have to try that next time. Full of information here on the End of the Bench podcast.
All right. Well, we're going to get into the Northwest Division today. However, first, last night, I think the deal is complete, but Ian Snell, is that his name? Ian?
Tony Snell.
Tony Snell. Jeez, who's Ian Snell's a pitcher for like the Pirates or something. Tony
Yes, he is.
Snell. Tony Snell going to Milwaukee for Michael Carter Williams straight up in a deal that gives Milwaukee another person that is taller than Jason Terry outside of Rashad Vaughn on the wing, and the Bulls get another guy who is a below average three-point shooter in their backcourt. So a win-win.
Really, that's exactly what both teams are looking for.
So, but we'll get into the Northwest Division here today, and we'll start, as always, alphabetically with the Denver Nuggets. They lost DJ Augustine to Orlando, which I actually like that move. Jeffrey LaVerge was traded to Oklahoma City. They added Jamal Murray in the draft, re-signed Darrell Arthur and Mike Miller, also drafted Juan Herman Gomez, and Malik Beasley and Peter Cornell. So, honestly, the big addition there is Jamal Murray. The Nuggets are an interesting team, but, I think you kind of have to add basically they're getting Wilson Chandler back, who missed the entire year last year. The Nuggets are a pretty interesting team. If Moutier doesn't have a sophomore slump, I think that they're pretty cool, right? I mean, it'd be Moutier, Murray, Chandler, and then I guess you're starting Jokic and Gallinari. Like that's a pretty good team. I think defensively they'll struggle. Although Jokic is obviously a pretty solid rim protector and a good someone to have in the last line of defense, if you will, of your defense. But I like this team offensively. I think they have a very high ceiling, like a top 10 offense, seemingly. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. They've obviously got some. They can play a good small ball offense. They got a lot of shooters on the floor. If Moutier's worked on his jump shot a lot, and if he hasn't, you can put Jamal Murray in there, and he's obviously a good shooter. He showed that at Kentucky. He can get buckets. The thing I'm excited about with this team is their big man rotation. You got Jokic and Nurkic and all the itches, I guess. And it's a really good young, two really good young centers, guys that are good rim protectors, have some offensive skill, play really hard. I think with a lot of the young teams that we have in the NBA, it's kind of the same thing with the Denver Nuggets. They're waiting on internal growth to see who can be a superstar on their roster. I think they're hoping to get that with the Jamal Murray type guy who's clearly a pretty competitive guy. We saw that at Kentucky. Can get buckets. I think they're waiting for that with Moutier, who has shown some really good flashes, at least in his rookie season, and they're hoping he's going to continue to get better. And you can see he has the ability to be a really good basketball player in the NBA. So yeah, I agree with you on the offensive end. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch and get up and down the floor. That's what you do in Denver, right? You're in better shape because you play at a higher elevation and you try and run other teams out of the gym. So I think they'll be a league pass darling, so to speak. People have fun watching them play. Defensively, they'll probably struggle because you're going to have young guys out on the perimeter. Gallinari is probably going to play a lot of minutes at the 4. And we'll see how he can handle banging inside to see if he can stay healthy. And obviously, Wilson Chandler's a plus defender, in my opinion. He's a pretty good defender, all-around basketball player. So getting him back will definitely help them on that end of the floor.
Yeah, I mean, they're an interesting team. They have 11 guys who I say are like above average NBA players, which is weird to say. I imagine that they're going to have to make a trade of some sort because either, it seems like Will Barton is going to take the minutes that Murray would get.
Should get.
So And Will Barton was a great surprise last year. Yeah, I would look to sell high on him. And then they kind of have a clog at the 4 because I guess they're going to start Fareed, but they have Fareed and Gallo and Wilson Chandler in addition to their 2 big men. So that's a lot. That's 5 guys for 2 spots really. And if you start Fareed, then you're not starting one of Chandler or Gallinari. So I don't know. They're gonna have to either deal like 2 people, I think, by the end of the year, just to kind of sort out their rotation.
Yeah, they're in an interesting place because it seems like they have a lot of good NBA basketball players, but and that take up the same position, right? Will Barton is a good NBA basketball player who, in the right team, can help off the bench to take him to another level. And maybe the same thing with Fareed, right? You bring him as an energy guy off the bench. He's not a good defender. So maybe you can bring him off the bench as an energy guy to rebound and get you some points and putbacks and roll buckets. And then they take a playoff team to another level instead of having to try and be the guy on a team that still needs time to develop. And then you open up minutes for Jamal Murray and you're playing Gallinari and Wilson Chandler more often. So I think you're right. They'll probably make a move at some point during the season. And then there's a team who has a lot of cap flexibility going forward. What is there? 74 million right now and 65 million without some options and extensions, but it won't put them anywhere near the cap next year going into next summer. So they have some room if a free agent would decide that they wanted to come to Denver, something to maybe a younger guy to grow with their core. But I think they're on the right track. You're exactly right when you say they got 11 average to slightly above average NBA players on the roster, which is more than you can say for some of the other teams that are rebuilding, right? Who are just kind of putting a roster together every year and hoping they nail it in the draft. Denver's at least putting a team on the floor that is fun to watch every year.
Right. And the last thing I'll say is I really like Gary Harris.
Yeah.
Definitely, he's a good defender even as a rookie last year. And he was surprisingly a good enough shooter, I thought, from the perimeter. So I like what he's done. I like to see him take another leap forward, and I hope he does so because I like watching him play.
Yeah, I agree. I think the future is pretty bright in Denver as the roster is constructed right now if they continue to make the right moves.
Right. I agree. Next, Minnesota Timberwolves. They lost Kevin Garnett.
4-1 out.
And 4-1 out for him. And Damian Rudez. Added Chris Dunn from the draft. Cole Aldrich on a pretty awesome 3-year, $21.8 million deal. Russell Butler probably on the minimum. Jordan Hill, which I thought was kind of weird given their seemingly depth in their back or in their front court. And Brandon Rush on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. And I thought that was a little weird too because I feel like they also have a lot of like shooting guards. But either way, I like this team. I'm probably not as high on them as everyone else is. They still have some stuff to sort out. I think like pieces like what are they going to do with Levine? What is his ultimate role in the offense? I guess I see him more as like a 6th man type guy that can get some buckets that doesn't really need to play. I feel like when you're on a second unit, you can have a more nebulous position.
Yeah.
When you're one of the either the 1 or the 2, it doesn't really matter so much. So I feel like the 6-man rule is going to fit him best. I think Chris Dunn is going to fit in excellently, and he probably won't start, but I think he should start because I think his skill set fits with Rubio and Wiggins and Cat. They lack a little wing depth, I guess, which is why I guess Brandon Rush can help with that. He's big enough, but outside of Wiggins, they don't really have anyone that. So if Wiggins gets hurt, they're kind of screwed. And then I think they have a lot of front court depth. So I like this team a lot. I don't think they're going to win, like 41 games or anything like that. Maybe like 37, 38. But I think they'll have like a substantially better record than last year. But maybe the record. Like the team is going to be substantially better. The record will be a little bit better, but you know what I mean? Like it's like, I don't think that their play will add up to just as many wins as what everyone's thinking.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. I think, you generally see slow incremental improvement in the NBA, regardless of how much better the players get on the team, right? The Golden State Warriors were the exception that proves the rule, so to speak, because they jumped for 2 straight years and ended up winning an NBA championship, and that generally doesn't happen most times. You see teams get better slowly. I think you're right. I think we'll see a much better basketball team, but the record may not reflect it because they are in the Western Conference, and they're going to play a lot of tough basketball games pretty much day in and day out. So, but I think the reason everybody's
I have a question. Pekovic is hurt, right?
Pekovic is done. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to. Yeah.
Maybe the Jordan Hill signing makes more sense that way.
Yeah. Okay. Pekovic is hurt per usual, unfortunately, because he can't guard anybody. But I like watching him go after rebounds and score in the post because he's got a lot of post moves. But I think we get the same reaction to the Minnesota Timberwolves that we got to the Pelicans with Anthony Davis because Karl Anthony Towns is such a universally skilled big man, right?
Mm.
The difference in those situations is that Minnesota's done a pretty good job of building a young core around him, a very talented young core around him, instead of trying to put guys like Tyreek Evans and in his on his team early in his career. So we'll see slower growth. We won't see maybe the Pelicans playoff run 2 years ago or anything like that. But this is a core that's very easy to be excited about because Chris Dunn should be a Rookie of the Year in Rookie of the Year competition. He's a really great defender. He's going to be able to score the basketball at a certain point. He might not be able to do it his rookie year, but he's got all the tools he needs to do that. Andrew Wiggins is continuing to get better. And the cool thing about both those guys is they can guard multiple. They can guard the 2, the 3, or the 1, really. I mean, they're that sort of athlete where they can guard a lot of positions. Karl Anthony Towns in 2 or 3 years, we're probably going to be talking about him as the best big man in the NBA. And we were, if my memory serves me correctly, we were talking about putting him on an All-NBA team, third-team All-NBA team, just because, it's at the fault of everybody else because we couldn't find enough centers. Mark Gasol was hurt and those sorts of things, but he also had that good of a season. So he's going to continue to get better. And KG's, he's gone, but he's still part of that organization, and he's going to continue to mentor Karl Anthony Towns and help him to get better. So I think that goes a long way with his development as well. I agree with you 100%. We're not going to see – we may see 41 wins, but it'll because everything fell right for him. Like everybody worked incredibly hard this offseason, and they won a bunch of really close games and those sorts of things. But I think in 2 or 3 years, this is a team we're going to be talking about, but it's just going to take a little bit more internal growth, which they have time for with such a young core.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think, the things they lack are shooting. The only player they can consistently shoot is going to be Dunn, and we're not even sure that he can consistently shoot yet. He's still going to have to prove it on the NBA level. Cole Aldrich is going to be a key signing with Pekovic going down. Cole Aldrich had like a 21 PER last year, which is super ridiculous, and it's sad that the Clippers couldn't re-sign him because they need his depth.
You got to pay Austin.
So they have a pretty good 3-man rotation there at the big, and I think we saw like a small leap forward from Shabazz last year that we kind of all been waiting for, and I think him and Levine on the second unit is interesting if they end up doing that. Yeah,
I think Levine is. Oh, who we forgot to talk about is Gorgie Jang.
Yeah, he's starting. He's starting the center.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, that's part of that big man rotation. Who's
it'd be Aldrich, Ding, and Cat.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think Levine and Muhammad. Muhammad's a guy you come in, you give the ball to him, right, and he's just going to go get buckets. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of guy you need on the second unit. I think Levine and Dunn I don't think they'll want to get rid of Rubio, but if they would decide they wanted to add more shooting or something at the point guard position, or I guess any other position, because Dunn and Levine can play it. They can share that role. You have the luxury now of being able to dangle Rubio in front of teams if they're excited about him, and maybe go add some shooting if you want to. Probably not this season because it just seems pretty fruitless to both of us. Obviously, we don't think they're a huge playoff team or a contender this year, but it gives you options moving forward.
With Rubio, though, I feel like they really could be what people think they could be on defense, although they are very young. But Rubio is a great defender.
Yeah.
Wiggins, a lot of his issues is placement more than one-on-one defense, and I feel like Tibbs will help that. And, Cat's obviously a great defender. So I feel like they could be really good on defense if Rubio is around. I think they can crack the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's going to take time for Dunn to be the defender that everybody thinks he's going to be, right? So it's good to have Rubio. I wonder if this is the type of, they've got a ton of cap flexibility going forward. I think next year they have team options for some guys, but nobody's due for a contract because their roster's so young, right? So everybody's just a team. Yeah, everything's just so. This is the type of roster that I could see in a 29, 30-year-old free agent that's still got some game left and going, if I want to win a ring, why not take a couple of years and go with these guys and see what we can do. At least that's me as a guy who would like to win. But that'd be a fun roster to play with, and that gives them options going forward. Because it's a guarantee if they were in Miami that somebody would want to go play with this roster, right? They just happen to be in Minnesota, and that sucks for them. But it'll be interesting to see what they can do in the offseason going forward because they have a ton of flexibility.
All right, well, moving on to Oklahoma City. An interesting offseason for them, the most interesting of the division, obviously. They lost Kevin Durant. That goes without saying. Serge Ibaka to the Orlando Magic. And then they have added Domantas Sabonis as a rookie, some other rookies that they're going to stash over. Ronnie Price on basically a 2-year min deal. Jeff LaVerge they added through a trade with Denver. And then they added Oladipo and Ilyasova in the Ibaka trade. This team I feel like it's going to underperform, but I also feel like they have the potential to be pretty good on defense, especially if Adams is as good as he showed during the postseason, because that's a super interesting development. I think Westbrook and Oladipo have the potential to be very good on defense, and losing Ibaka is going to hurt. But like you said, they when we talk about this all the time, they don't have shooting from the backcourt position, and thus they added Ilyasova to give them some front court shooting. And Adams has a nice little short corner game. He's not completely inept from there. So they have some spacing in the front court. They lack, obviously, without Durant, they're going to be missing a bunch, and they lack really just to be able to spread the floor, and they're going to miss some of his and Ibaka's vertical spacing as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those things. I mean, they have the potential to be a playoff team. Oladipo's shown really, really bright spots as an NBA player, and he's obviously got the potential to be a lockdown defender. So I don't think they lost. They did not lose a lot of shooting guard position, although Waiters is gone. Very sad. And so it's kind of going to be interesting to see, and he's going to do it, whether Russell Westbrook kind of accepts all these guys coming to play with him now, or if he continues to do that's all on me thing and takes this as a personal vendetta season. Because I think if he plays within the team, they've got some pieces to be a good offense. I mean, Ilyasova is a good floor spacer. Adams got a lot better on offense last year. Oladipo can score when he's really, really on. At least shoot when he's really on. He can score all the time. He can get to the bucket almost at will. He's very athletic. So it'll be interesting to see if Westbrook tries to go on some sort of vengeance thing.
Right.
I think you're right. They could be a good defensive team. Ilyasova's shown periods in his NBA career where he's been a really good rebounder. Adams is obviously a plus defender, a plus defender inside. Oladipo's a good wing defender. And I think it's kind of on Russell Westbrook to get keep his head in the game the entire time. Andre Robertson, obviously, yeah. So they have a lot of really good defenders on the team. So it'll be interesting to see if Westbrook can kind of keep his head on the defensive end. He's the guy that everybody thinks James Harden is on the defensive end, more or less, right? Bleacher Report just doesn't make 500 vines about it every night to make fun of him because they're probably scared of what Russie would do to him if they made fun of him. They probably come to the Bleacher Report offices and dunk on everybody, and they don't want that to happen. So they just ignore the fact that he never gets back on defense and reaches and then doesn't start playing defense. It's just, yeah, he is who Harden does that stuff too, but he does it probably even more. People just don't call him out.
Yeah, and I think they lack depth, unfortunately, and they could get away with that with Russ and KD, and they did their best to try to recoup some of that, but it's just impossible to do. If you're starting Oladipo, then that means your best bench players are like Cam Payne, Conter, and like Josh Heisis or Kyle Singler.
Kyle Singler had a really good preseason, which I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things, but he had a really, really good preseason.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. It's a weird second unit, basically. And they just don't have the depth that they've had in years past, or they don't have the depth that they need with the team with only one superstar.
Yeah, I think they did a good job getting as much depth as possible as they could. Or they didn't have depth with. You're right. They didn't have depth even when they had Durant and Westbrook, but it didn't matter because they had Durant and Westbrook, and they blitzed people when those two guys were on the floor together. And so they did a decent job of trying to add some depth through trades or whatever in the offseason. But the problem is in the NBA, more than probably any other sport, because there's only 5 guys on the court at a time, and they heavily influence the game. It's hard to replace an elite player with a bunch of like C+, B- guys. Like you can't do it the same way. So they did a good job of getting some depth to take care of some of those issues they've had recently, but it's just ultimately it's definitely not going to make up for what they lost to Kevin Durant.
Hold on one second. I think my boss is calling me.
Okay.
Hello? I'm good. How are you? Yeah, can you hold on 1 second? This is gonna be a long ass phone call.
Oh yeah, no problem. You're good.
All right, I'll be back.
Yeah, no problem.